That'll get us in there. Either way, people are like, it just started. You know. All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, yeah. Let's get these announcements for today's the 17th. Yeah, for December 17th. Let's get them rolling. Number one, free books. Over there. All right, this one is on the shelf, The Way of Life by Bill Johnson. I don't think I have ever had a book challenge me more to be like Jesus. Period, doc. Like, this book, high class. Yeah, so good. I think it's probably within the first 3 chapters. He tells a story of the church was getting some work done, and the youth pastor wanted to help. So they're like, hey, cut these beams to 8 feet, like 8-foot beams. And he was like, cool, cool, cool. So then he cut the first beam 8 feet, and then he got the great idea to measure off of the beam that he just cut. And so as he cut these beams to help the guys out, obviously the beams got longer and longer and longer, and he ran out of wood. They didn't have enough. It was a whole thing. And he says basically that is where we are today in Christianity, where Jesus is the original, and we have then put whatever preacher or leader of the faith in there, and then the latest leader and the latest leader and the latest leader, and now we look up and it's a group of people that don't resemble Jesus at all. And that was a game changer for me. And he goes into the rest of this book talking about that. So, very great book. Deep Discipleship is a book I have not read yet, but this is a massive pull on my heart for our church, that we are not just people who come here on a Sunday morning to study or listen to whoever teach or preach or whatever that may be, but that as a church body we are building and growing together, that we are aware of who we are and what we are doing as a church, and understanding the need that we have for each other. Now, whether we address that need or acknowledge that need is a different story, but we cannot get around the fact of the biggest reason we are here as a church is for each other. Because Jesus does the salvation individual part for us. The Holy Spirit grows the fruit in us. But it is with each other that we actually see like good community and have help within this community. So stay tuned for more on this as we turn the page on the year. Cool. Those are both on the bookshelf. Next week, Christmas Eve, breakfast. We decided we were going to do breakfast instead of lunch. So breakfast will start at 9:30 next week. So bring your food. The sign-up sheet was sent out. I will send it out again this week. Yeah, so put something on there, bring something to share. Juice will be taken care of by the church. So there's that. But 9:30, and I think service is probably gonna start somewhere 10, 15, like normal. I mean, we've been doing better. We've been starting like way closer to 10. Like, we've been doing much better, which I think is Jesus. Never mind, I'm not gonna say it. But anyway, we've been starting closer to 10. So next week, we probably won't start until 10:15, 10:20, somewhere in there. But that'll give everybody ample time to get here and eat, get settled, have a good time. Yeah, I don't think it's a 7:30 game next week. So we won't have any football on before service, unfortunately. So sorry to myself. So sorry, Reefer. Dang it. But yeah, next week, Christmas Eve, we are going to leave the tables up. We decided. And yeah, we're going to have a good Christmas Eve service. Yes.
Is there a dress code theme? Are we doing sweaters, fancy dress, pajamas?
So this is where I live is like, because it's Christmas time, like all of it is encapsulated in Christmas. And so I am more for the expression of like whatever Christmas you want to do, like that is Christmas magic within itself. So as much as you want or as little, that is fine by me. Yeah, whatever you want, do it to the max. Like comfortability, dress for weather, and if it's just Christmas earrings, you did it. You won the game. If you got just Christmas shoes on, you won the game. You got on a Christmas t-shirt, you won the game. Pajamas, onesies, whatever. It's a free-for-all. It's Christmas time in the city. I don't know if y'all knew that, but it's Christmas time in the city. Like, so yeah, the theme is Christmas. Feel free to express that however you like. I got so many options and I'm really excited about it. So, as you should, as you should. Also, I mean, would it be, let me just ask this right now. Would it be distracting if I was talking about Jesus wearing a Buddy the Elf onesie? All right, cool. Cool. Just want to put that out there. So, all right, cool. All right. I'm like, the fact that I'm like wearing Christmas bows in my ears right now and nobody said anything shows how far we have come. Like, people aren't even surprised anymore. It's just like Rafer's doing what he does. So, all right. Just wanted to test the waters on the extreme side. So, thank you. So, yes. No, Christmas is the theme. Live your best life within that. So, I'm not gonna say you're gonna get kicked out if you're not wearing Christmas stuff, but it's a really good possibility. Like, but I'm gonna wait till you drop your food off and then be like, well, you gotta go.
I have a lot of themed classes in advance since we did 12 days of Christmas at school, so I got backups on backups on backups.
Boom. Eileen said, I want everybody to stay.
Without an outward expression, I will fix that.
Boom. Eileen will have some antlers for you, some stars. You know, cool. All right, glad we covered all that. The important things. Birth of Jesus, baby. Okay, emotionally healthy spirituality. Boom. Y'all want to come up or no? Not today? I mean, huh? From the table? Okay, so emotionally healthy spirituality class just wrapped this last Tuesday. And we are going to start up again in January. And I asked the class if they would share just a little bit of what the class did for them, because it is one thing for me to talk about it, but it is another for other people to talk about it and you to hear what they felt and how it affected them. So I'm gonna give the floor Yeah, whoever wants to go.
Go ahead, Ben.
Go ahead, Ben.
So, this class taught me how to build healthier relationships, not only with others around me, but also with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
It helped me become a true disciple of Christ. And if you're not sure about it, it doesn't matter where you're at on your journey with Christ. It's a good class that teaches you skills that you need to build better relationships.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And I learned that I'm going to become a better person, a better communicator. Express my ideas more.
Nice.
I express my concerns and my disappointments.
Yeah,
And
that
I
part.
try to put God first in every single day.
That's good. That's good.
Well, I was really surprised by the study because I think out of my arrogance and my pride that I would learn very much. And I'm just admitting that again. So it's really practical study of practicing just being with the Lord and practical steps of how to make that happen. And that really helped my life. Practical steps for conversation making.
Yeah.
For problem solving.
Yeah.
For conflict solving or approaching a conflict and deciding whether or not it's worth needing to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciated how, even though it asks us to go into your past and into the way that you were raised and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired of that. It was purposeful, and it showed points of how to use those things that you find in patterns to help you in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really surprised by it. I was really well surprised by it. And it's going to help me with my conflict resolution and procrastinating.
Yeah.
And really?
Don't look like that right. Don't look like that right now, Eric. Let's get into marriage counseling first.
It was amazing. And it brought me to a deeper level of healing in places I didn't know I needed.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what I have to say.
That's what's up. Yeah. Conflict resolution, speaking up, learning to speak up for yourself, learning to know what it is you are feeling so that you can speak up for those things. Really, really big, really, really great class. I had read the book before we started the class, then I had to reread the book for the class. And yeah, it's a game changer. Massive, massive game changer. Game changer. So as it stands right now, we have 3 spots taken. Yeah, 4 spots taken out of 12. We're gonna hold at 12. Yes, ma'am.
I have one more thing to say.
Go ahead.
You guys gotta do it. If you haven't done it, you gotta try this.
Yeah.
In the group setting, it provides an environment of fellowship and communication with other people you get to know. It is not the same as if you do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Not the same.
And the food is really good.
And the food is really good. Yeah. Again, coming back to community, fellowship, it is different from a small group in that most small groups have homework to do, and then you just kind of like discuss the homework. But this class, every piece of it is you need every piece for the next piece, and you have to work through each piece for the next piece. And so what you are bringing back is very real, authentic answers, because the questions and the homework point you to that. It's just not what you think about something. It is challenging you on where you stand today and how you got there, and how to bring all of that back to Jesus. It is a very, very great class. So yeah, 4 spots taken of 12. yeah, text the church number, text me, let me know. I think we're going to start end of January so that we don't run into Memorial Day weekend. So if you're on the fence, you should just say yes. Just say yes. So there's that on emotionally healthy spirituality. On to the next. Thank you all for giving. We greatly appreciate it. Yes.
We still have to pay rent, even though it's Christmas time.
Yes, we do.
So
Please give. Yeah. So if you are not giving, Venmo, the big brown box at the front, or the Church Center app are all ways for you to give. And again, we do appreciate all of you giving because, like Fathom said, we got to pay rent every month, even though it's Christmas time. So, yes, Jesus did pay it all. And if I said that to Paul, he would tell us, well, you will go where Jesus paid for the building, which is outside. So there's that. Unless you want to have that conversation with him yourself, then by all means, speak on behalf of Oasis. You know, like, hey, Paul, just call her, call this number, and just be like, Jesus paid it all, and then let the conversation go from there. So, dang, I should not do that. Okay. Oh, I thought you were asking a question. All right. If you're not receiving text messages from Oasis, please text T to 575-222-8985, and we will get you hooked up. Lastly, Allie had her baby Friday night. Baby girl, because they were waiting to find out. So it's a baby girl. I forget the two names she said they were deciding to for the boy. They had a boy name and a girl name. Yeah, I don't even remember enough. That doesn't even jog anything in my brain. I'm not. Nobody sent me a text of a name this morning, so not my fault. I'm like, that was at a party a week ago.
the meal train said so excited to meet baby Amelia.
All right.
So
Yeah, I have not clicked the link yet. I have the link that I will be sending out for the meal train tomorrow, or probably this afternoon. Their meal train, I think, starts Tuesday, I believe. Yeah, their meal train starts Tuesday. So I will get that link out today so that somebody can sign up for Tuesday. And then it goes to the end of January. Yeah, a whole month and change, I think, a little bit, 4 weeks or something like that. Yeah, every other day. Yeah, but we got a lot of time, so let's feed them, take care of them. The meal train is gold, man. To be on the receiving end of a meal train, I cannot express how good it is. So please, 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 when that link goes out, sign up. You're gonna make dinner anyway, so just make more.
You can always order out.
Yes, you can always order out. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is her husband with her?
Yes. Yes. He is. So she did have the baby Friday, Amelia. Is that with an A? Amelia? Cool.
I think it was Allison.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Because they were going to go Desmond if it was a boy. Got it. Okay. I don't have nothing else to say. That was a lot. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor to Eileen. Please, jump on Zoom. If you're going to say some stuff. Let's get this party started.
Well, it would be nice to have one for like two of the slides. One of the slides. I don't know. I just need this. No.
We're just,
I-
the number. I always rely on it.
Sorry. Is there a way to pull it up? Okay. I made my own slides and forgot to put it on there. Also, there are handouts at your seat. If there's not a handout, just go to another table and steal one. And there is going to be an interactive sing-along for the men in the room. So, I don't know how good your Hebrew is, but I'm going to need you to pull that out of your brain bank. And also memorizing. There will be a test at the end. Actually, you're one of the most important people in the room, along with him, to be able to sing it to your future bride. Yes. I have the microphone because 2 reasons. One, I lost my voice this week because I got sick, which was dumb. But also I teach with a microphone. I normally wear it around my neck, and so I don't yell because teenagers are dumb. We ready? No, we're not. Cool. Mentally prepare yourself if you would like to read Proverbs 31 while we are sitting and waiting.
That is cool.
Oh, stop it. I have a banner? Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Excellent. All right, do I have a volunteer to read Proverbs 31? If you do not volunteer, you will be voluntold.
The words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. What are you doing, my son? What are you doing, son of my womb? What are you doing, son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to take strong drink, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed, and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to the one who is perishing, and food to those in bitter distress. Let them drink and forget their poverty, and remember their misery no more. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. An excellent wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her work praise in her gates.
All right. Why do I have so many of these first pages? All right, so Proverbs 31 is probably one of the most popular proverbs on the planet, particularly in the middle class white Christian women sect. There's cups with verses on them and little bags, and her children are raised up because they're blessed. And so it's a proverb that is often massively twisted, particularly in today's American culture. So, we're going to talk about what it is and what it's not, and we're going to start with what it's not. So, first things first, let's look at the first 30 chapters of Proverbs that we just spent the last several months talking about. They are all chapters about wisdom, who to talk to, who to bring by your side, who to listen to, particularly like this book here where Rafer was talking about like who to bring into your circle and who to listen to and whatnot. Like this goes very much along with Proverbs, and particularly along with Proverbs 31. And it would not make sense in a theological, in an English like literature background to be like, okay, all of the first 30 chapters are talking about this symbology and this metaphor and so forth and so on. And then we get to Proverbs 31 and they're like, oh, it's a list on the perfect woman. And if you can't do this, well then, you're out of luck. I'm so sorry. Like that doesn't flow with the entire theme of the entire book. So we often hear that this chapter is about femininity, and it's a list of standards, and this is a list of how a wife should be. And it reduces women to like 3 main categories: marriage, motherhood, and domesticity. So if you're unmarried, you do not have biological children, and you can't keep a home to save your life, well, sorry. Like, you can't imagine that that's exactly what God meant. Like, that doesn't make sense at all. So the ideal woman is often misconstrued in today's standards to what she has to be, and not necessarily what God has laid out in the entire rest of the Bible, which we will talk about a lot. So speaking first on the concept of marriage, which is not in the Bible biblically commanded, and there are several books that talk about the sanctity of being single, and that just what I said a second ago, like there is no commandment to be like you have to get married, because otherwise you're not Christian enough. So the greatest concern here has to do, when we talk about this typically, with a woman's character and how she interacts with people, which goes back to Proverbs chapters 2 and 3, which I believe Rafer taught on, with how we talk to people. So the actual writer of this book, which we don't know who it was specifically, but the writer is instead hopeful that the young men of his community, will use this as not a list of what a woman is and is not, but a list of ideals and a list of concepts with which to look for in a wife. So that's why I say, like, you can't look at the other books of this, the other chapters of this book, and be like, oh, well, that's a metaphor and that's symbology. But if she does not wake up early, she's not a good wife. If she doesn't, this is one of my favorites that it talks about. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. That was one of the most expensive fabrics, and it is still to this day the most expensive color to produce. Now we have synthetic dyes, which is completely different. But back in the day, purple was created by crushing a specific beetle. that came from a specific region. So to make that dye, you had to collect hundreds and hundreds of these dead beetles, you had to dry them, you had to pound them, and then you had to turn it into the dye, which is why it was a color reserved for royalty, because it was so expensive to produce. So when it mentions here that she clothes herself, her clothing is fine linen and purple, that's not saying that like she goes all out and just like head to toe glitz. No. That's not what that means. And so you can't be like, oh, well in chapter 2 it's an allegory, but in chapter 31, if she's not glitzy and glammy, like, are we all tracking?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, going back to the marriage portion, God created marriage to be a metaphor for Christ's relationship with the church. We know that. The bride of Christ, laying your life for the church. So that again relates to this chapter, and it's not commanding us to be married, but it is commanding us to be the bride of Christ. And that marriage relationship may not necessarily be like a factual contract where, you know, we got up in front of our friends and family and said I do, but instead it's that relationship between you and the church. Not the church being the building, the church being Christ. Okay. Anyone who calls himself or herself a Christian is a bride of Christ, having responsibilities to spread the good news of the gospel and caring for the poor. Okay. The reality of Proverbs 31. First off, this is a poem. It doesn't look like a poem in the sense of what you studied in 9th grade English class, but it is in fact a poem, and this is where I wanted my laser, because this is probably one of 2 favorite things that I found. I've been studying this for, when did we announce that we were doing this? March? May? I signed up for this chapter immediately. I've been hype about it every single week. My original talk was a comfortable 2.5 hours, and I have since cut it back, so, because I was told that's too much. Anyway. The poem is an acrostic, and in Hebrew, not only is it an acrostic poem, but it uses every letter of the Hebrew alphabet as the first letter of the line from the beginning of the alphabet to the end of the alphabet. Which, if any of you remember the first time you wrote an acrostic poem in 2nd grade, when you were assigned the animal, and you're like, I got the dolphin, and I had to do an acrostic for the dolphin, and then at Christmas time you did one based on your name. It's not easy to do. Particularly when you have 3 E's in your first name, and what has to do with Christmas that begins with E? Like, you can only do so much. So the fact that there's an entire chapter written poetically using the Hebrew alphabet in order, which I will not read because my Hebrew's not that good. That's cool. Like, that's really cool. So, yes. Lost my train of thought. It's coming back. So the purpose of this poem, that squeak is going to kill me, is to draw attention to the overlooked glory of the everyday. So that's the other thing. This person that they're speaking of in the poem, just like we say in life is not made up of the big moments, but it's all the little things in between. Like, that's how they're describing. They're describing this woman, this person, in her everyday and how she addresses the everyday situations, the everyday life, the everyday interactions. Okay, at the bottom, for those of you that, the bottom of the Keynote Study Bible, it does note this, that it points out that a key to a woman's excellence is that she fears the Lord. And as a result of that, her excellence coming from the fear of the Lord, her husband trusts her, and her children honor her. And it specifically points out that physical beauty, the clothes in purple, all of that stuff, that fades. Because gravity exists. But the eternal value is the godly character inside. Yeah. Is there anything people would like to add to this before we move on?
Talk some more about the hyperbolic militaristic imagery.
Okay. So this is where I went into the deep dive of the each bullet, if you will. where society today tends to take it at face value. So rising early in the morning, making sure she laughs in the future because she's prepared all the time. But that is actually more of a undercurrent of things, and we will get to it with our 10 virtues, the third to last and second to last slide. So it's following the same ideas that the first 30 chapters have, where there's imagery and metaphors, and it's not necessarily laid out point blank. We had chapters where it was like, watch your mouth, and that was not necessarily like, yeah, no, it was very direct. And so that's kind of where I'm going with this today, is people have taken it like very cut and dry, but in reality, God's got a little more going on than that. Did that answer your question? Cool. Okay. So the other reality is that Proverbs 31 is not talking to women at all. It's actually talking to men. Specifically, young unmarried men in their journey to become married. This is the sing-along portion of the day, if you will. In Jewish culture, and this is talking specifically about the difference between Jewish religion and Jewish culture. So in Jewish culture, it is common for men to sing this song to their wives weekly on Shabbos. Now, we do not celebrate Shabbos in the same way that the Jewish culture does, where they lock it down and they have 25 hours and they don't do any of the 25 forms of work, so forth and so on. That's not where we're going with this. But it is, Proverbs 31 is instructional language to the male audience, and one of the ways that they can come through with this is by speaking to their women and sing it as a song of praise to the women in their lives. Now, this is not just about their wives. They can also sing it to their mothers, their sisters, their daughters, their friends, etc. And it is also common in the Jewish culture that not only is it sung at every Shabbos table throughout the world, if no men are present or if no women are present, it's still sung in honor of the Jewish women who may not be around the table. So if it's guys' night and it happens to be Shabbos, they will still sing this in the honor of the other women that exist in this world. And then if no men are present, because it's a girls' night, then they'll sing it to each other and to other women as well. So I do have a short version of this in the Hebrew. A lot of Hebrew songs and a lot of Hebrew prayers are not melodically consistent. So if you were on TikTok at all this past week and a half for Hanukkah, you'll notice that the prayers that they say before they light the Hanukkah candles, people would sing it in a different way, even though the prayer was the same way. So if you were to Google, hold on, I need my Eshet Chayil, which is the name of this song, there's different melodies that you could sing as long as the words are the same, which I have provided for you phonetically and then also in English. And the expectation is that the men will do this for the women in their lives and the women in the world. I'm just kidding. There will not necessarily be a grade, but the concept is there. So would you mind playing as best you can? So you can see that this is a very upbeat and celebratory song in the sense that we are taking the time to celebrate the women in our lives. The only instructional language that is at all in Proverbs 31 is the last two verses, verses 30 and 31. And it's instructional language directed at the male audience to praise her for all her hands have done. So, well, I do not expect anybody here to go home and learn Hebrew and then memorize this and sing it to their wives or women in their lives every Friday night. The point is to remember to celebrate the women in your life outwardly, particularly in their love language, so that they can feel appreciated for all that they do.
I agree.
Thanks, Val.
Pay attention, Eric and Lee.
That's why when he started out by saying this ain't for me, I was like, oh, watch yourself, young sir. Right. All right. So, chayil is Hebrew for valor. And there's two different ways that they speak of it. So, eshet chayil is for the women, celebrating women of virtue. And the men are jabir chayil, which is men of valor, which we talk often about from Judges. So, this is where there is a distinct split in how the world talks about how America talks about Proverbs 31 and how we should be looking at it. So Proverbs 31 is the equivalent of the Hebrew, like, you go girl. And it's a way to celebrate how the women are doing in their lives at that time. And so something that was pointed out is on Instagram. Somebody from the church posted it in their stories this week of like, your 40%, if you only have 40% of your energy that day, but you give all 40%, that's still you being a woman of valor that week. And I just thought that that was a very prudent post this week, given what I was going to talk about. And so there are some women, and this particular slide came from Rachel Held Evans' blogs. She made it a point to use it among her friends as that, like, you go girl thing. So when, you know how you do something really good, like, oh, I finally completed that chore. It took me 9 months, it took me 5 minutes, and I learned nothing from this, but I'm really excited about it. Then all the other friends would come in and be like, you woman of valor, good job, way to go. Like, you did the thing as best you could with what you had when you had it. And so there's a further explanation that valor isn't necessarily about what you do, but it's what you do with what you have and how you deal with it. So thinking specifically, hold on, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I am. Yes, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, chayil, so the word valor, chayil is used 274 times, but only 3 of those times was it translated as virtue instead of valor, and all 3 of them are about women in Proverbs 31. The other 271 times it talks about virtue on the battlefield, specifically in the book of Judges. It means great, Hebrew definition means great courage in the face of danger, especially times in battle. So then when you think about shifting that definition for a woman, like for Proverbs 31 women, it's how to fight and win the battle in her home, and in her community, and in her world. Like, what is she able to do from her position? And this is another thing with just the concept of, like, you don't have to be the next mega pastor to still make an impact. It's like across the table from whoever you're sitting across from, like however you interact with them, using the first 30 books that we learned about wisdom. And just because she is using virtue instead of valor, the 271 versus the 3, she is just as powerful of a representative of Christ as the men who are fighting the battle, like physically fighting, jousting. Slide. Okay, so biblical womanhood. I remember sitting in a like women's conference very early in my Christian journey. I grew up Roman Catholic, didn't work out, switched to not Roman Catholic. And so one of the first places that I went to was like any women's conference I could attend because I was like ready to learn. And I remember them talking about the fragrance of Christ and like how we're supposed to be sweet smelling all the time. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Because I knew it wasn't like something like physical, like you should always be showered because duh. But like some of what God has to say is like a hard truth. And you're not necessarily going to be the sweetest smelling thing in the room when you have to tell them like, hey, that's like a major sin and you probably shouldn't be doing that. Would you like some coffee?
There's different ways to start that sentence in emotionally healthy spirituality class.
But at the end of the day, just because you start the sentence nicer doesn't necessarily mean that that particular conversation is a sweet one. Right. And so that's where like biblical womanhood, I have an issue with how today's Christianity and Christianese like talks about it, because I mean, God smites people in the Bible. He's not this like happy Santa guy. He's hardcore. I don't know if you've met Jesus, but he's hardcore. All right. So the studies that I read, the research that I did talked in this particular section, talked a lot about just a reflection of, I don't know, 2/3 of the books that we've read in, or chapters we've read in Proverbs, about making sure that you are in community, in biblical community, and you are reading things that are truthful. And not only just reading things and having these conversations, but bringing them back to the Bible to make sure that you are not, and this is where Rafer's book recommendation this morning was so purposeful, like making sure that you're staying at those 8 feet, making sure that you are using a ruler. Whoever you're talking to, whatever they're saying to you, is it biblical, or is it going to lead you just slightly astray? Because it's really easy to pick out the obviously blasphemous, like insert specific names of people that we know who are not necessarily the best Christians. But like those people that are just slightly off are the ones that you really just have to watch out for. Okay. Okay. Slide. So, Proverbs as a whole, being a book about spiritual principles and universal truths, let's talk about some of the vocabulary within it. This is where I think a lot of people tend to get things wrong, because when you look up the definitions of these words in the ancient Hebrew, it's pretty straightforward. So when it talks about buying portions and considering the field, if you look it up in the ancient Hebrew text, it literally means like she spends her time being like, is this a good purchase? Is this not? And so people are often like, it means what it means. It means what it says. But that's where the more metaphorical things like girding her loins, dressing herself for battle. She, unfortunately, but that soundtrack slaps. She's not great. She's not physically putting on the armor, although if she were to like get up and make breakfast to the Mulan soundtrack, yeah, it's a good one. Now I need to go home and watch that. It's playing through my head right now. One of the words that I did look up that I really loved was the verse about considering the fields before buying. And the Hebrew word is zamam, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, and I apologize to every Jew worldwide. It means to consider, propose, and devise. And it specifically means, this is word 2161 in the back, by the way. You can follow along if you choose. But it's a verb meaning from the idea to talk to oneself in a low voice as if arriving at a conclusion. I wanted to point this out specifically because for all of us who are outward processors and who are walking around the house talking to ourselves, having both sides of the conversation, it is biblical.
Yes.
Okay? I don't know how many of you guys do that and still lose the conversation with yourself, but that happens to me a lot, and I don't understand. Like, I am both sides, and I still lose. Because usually it's me trying to pick a fight with someone, and Jesus is like, don't. Right, but like for people who make fun of you, and I'm not saying anybody in the room would ever do that, but for the people who are like, why are you talking to yourself? Jesus taught me that that's how we do this. Yeah. So if you take away anything today, it's that the men in our lives need to learn Hebrew to sing to us, and that it's biblical to talk out loud to yourself in a low voice. Okay. So the next two slides are going to what Fathom's question was earlier, which I've already forgotten. Sorry. But I just remembered that it has to do with you. So this slide and the next one is just a copy of the handout that I provided for you. But it's a different look at what Proverbs 31 is, other than a direct list of like, women should make linen clothing and dye them with beetles. So this list is great. The next list is great because it points out also that she could very easily be replaced with he. This is not necessarily a gender-specific list, and it could also be an instructional list for the men in our lives. So men should also work hard. They should also be trustworthy and dependable, living their lives for Christ, so forth and so on. So we do know that this chapter is an instructional list towards men, for women, but that doesn't mean that men are excluded from learning these values as well. And this is where I got ahead of myself earlier, but I'm bringing it back. You didn't know this, but in my head I did. We'll talk about Ruth for a hot second. So consider Ruth. So before she got married, before she had a child, and before she becomes the influencer of the day, Boaz says to her, all the people in my town know that you are a woman of noble character. And so that to me is kind of what justifies my thoughts on this chapter, is that it wasn't because she was married, it wasn't because she had a child, it wasn't because she was a TikTok influencer of the day. She was still well known for her character prior to all of that. And so that gives hope to people in our lives, in our world, who are like, well, I'm not good enough because I'm not married yet, and Christian women are supposed to get married and have babies. No, that's not it, because just look at what Boaz says to Ruth, and she's one of our big women of the Bible. Slide. She lived her life with valor. So be careful focusing on marriage, motherhood, and domesticity. If you are one of the women who just can't cook corn to save your life, you're a great baker, you're a great cook, not once have you given anybody food poisoning, but for whatever reason, corn is not your strong suit, that's okay, because that's not the yardstick that we're measuring things by. Not that I have personal experience with that. I always set it on fire. How? I cannot cook it to save my life. I can cook a lot, but if you ask me to bring corn, it will be raw, because I'm not even going to try. So, it is not our roles that define us, but it is the integrity and the bravery that we bring to those roles. Slide. And if you want to know where I got my information from, most of it is from these four sources. First off, If Gathering. If you know me, you know I love If. That is an organization that seeks to engage, equip, and educate women to go out and make disciples of Christ. But not in a big flashy way, simply just sitting across the table from someone and having a conversation. Rachel Held Evans, She has passed away, very sad. We miss her a lot, but her website still is up and active, and she has some of the most incredible writing I have read as a new Christian. She did write a book about living as a Proverbs 31 woman and how horribly wrong everything went. And it is hilarious. And that's what introduced me to the concept that perhaps maybe we don't have it right as Americans. A Virtuous Woman is where I got this handout from, and then there was just, John Piper's got a lot on this topic, and he's a cool dude. I did pull quotes from other places on the internet, and I forgot where they were, so just so you know. Very little of this I made up.
I appreciate how you said it very quickly, but the Proverbs 31 went into a he, if you just replace the she.
Yeah.
All the way through. But we do that all the time.
All of
in
the time.
Word with he. And I
Yes.
know it still speaks to me.
Yes.
And so I liked how you turned that around and
Yeah.
pointed that out.
Absolutely. And it's a mental game. It's like there are a lot of people in a certain subsect of Christians in America who are like, well, it says she. It's like, okay, but the rest of the Bible does not. And you're cool with that. Why are you not cool with this one chapter of one book? Make that make sense. Or you could replace it with, I would not, it's a very scary thing to do. If you replace it with your name and then you're like, I should be doing this. God will talk to you in ways that will make you uncomfortable. That was it. That's all I got. I didn't practice an ending.
Thank you.
Amen.